right, folks. Hello and welcome into another podcast of Rolling with My Special Friends. Today, we got an awesome guest with us. We got somebody that's got 30 years of bass fishing experience in the professional level. He's a three-time Bassmaster champion, a Bassmaster qualifier for the championship, as well as 1.3 million in winnings. But one of the great things that we have learned about this man is how much he's done for other people. We also want to get into his story and let you know of two amazing things he's overcome within his life, within his sport, of dealing with meningitis and also dealing with the loss of his wife with cancer. So we want to make sure to get this story across and let all you guys understand out there what an amazing person we're going to get the chance to talk to. Mr. Mark, how are you today?
I'm doing well, Jim. It's great to see you again.
Oh, yeah. Great always to have you in front of us and be able to talk to you. Tell us, from a young age, how did this fishing thing get started? Where did the spark come from that got you going?
Well, there's a picture somewhere in this world, Jim, that my mother has of me in a diaper with a stick and a string fishing for 2 minutes in a minnow bucket. It started there. I've always had an interest for fishing. Being outside, and it's something I've always thought about every day of my life. We moved from the county into the city in the early 70s, and that's when bass clubs and bass fishing were taking off. And I had a neighbor, Clyde Watts, that became my mentor after I bugged him to death about going fishing with him. He would come in from an afternoon of fishing, park his boat in the garage, and I would say, this is a hula popper, and this is a mud bug, and this is a spinnerbait and a plastic worm. And I would tell him what they're all for. And I finally won him over on my knowledge of fishing as a young person. And he took my father and I fishing one day. We fished all day in the heat of the summer. And he finally said about 5 o'clock, it was time to go, that Ms. Watts had dinner on the table and we needed to go home. And I said, no, sir, Mr. Watts, we can't go. It's not dark yet. So he knew I was serious. He knew that I was excited about fishing and that a 10-year-old would behave in the boat, wear his life jacket when he needed to, do the things that were safe, not running around, not playing in the boat. And we fished every weekend from February to December for the next 5 years of my life. And he took a young person and taught him skills that he could use his entire life. And the great thing about it is I still have him. He's 94 years old. He lives in Florida now. I keep up with him. I keep tabs on him and contact him on a regular basis. And he's been just a major positive influence of the best kind of family, the best kind of Christian to be, the best kind of everything. Just a fantastic individual. And I'm blessed to have him in my life. There's no way about it.
Well, that's a pretty cool story to have that kind of influence in your life growing up. Now, tell everybody and get us forward to where we are now. How did that love and that man right there influence, and how do we get to where we are today? How did Mark get to professional fishing?
Well, I come from two overachievers, and they have more education degrees than you can imagine, and education was the way. I was mandated that I would have to get a college degree. So I had to figure out how to maintain my grades through high school and through college, because all I wanted to do was fish. So I got a fisheries degree from Murray State University, a fisheries biology degree from Murray State University. So I would have something to back up on in case the tournament fishing didn't work out. I also got my minor in real estate. That taught me a lot about marketing and business, and that allowed me to have a job when I would come home from events once I started my professional career. But the one thing that I hit upon in school, Jim, was basic public speaking. It's a class we all have to take, and it's a class that has helped me every day. It helps me working with sponsors. It helps me working with individuals. It helped me working with the organization, working with Bass. Excuse me. But it was something I never counted on that I would use on a daily basis. And that has been the most important thing for me as a professional angler and as a business person, is the basic public speaking.
Now, you brought up classes. Obviously, everybody knows right now that's in the fishing world that the college side of things is blowing up. and there's a team at every university you can think of. Everybody's out there. There's thousands of kids that are now coming after Mark. How do they get, where's a piece of advice to get Mark?
Well, I tell you, Jim, in the Elite Series, we had 100 guys this year on the Elite Series. 30%, 30 of the 100 are former college anglers, college champions, college winners, the whole 9 yards. And the college program gives these anglers so much experience coming on to the pro tour. They are fabulous anglers. Most of these guys are fantastic people too. Great ethics, great rules abiding, and just great fishermen. It's given them the experience on so many bodies of water, so many different species of fish. They come in and they're fearless. The flip side of that is the high school bass fishing, and that's getting lots and lots of kids involved in high school fishing such that they can make great decisions. I don't care where you are or what you do. If you take a kid and give him a fishing pole, or you give him a gun under adult supervision and take that child hunting or put him in shooting sports, those kids that are involved in hunting and fishing or outdoor sports like that seem to make great life decisions. My son, Max, he loves trap shooting. Fishing wasn't his deal. Trap shooting is. And getting him involved into the trap shooting world was a real hurdle for me because my wife, Donna, would not have wanted him around guns. She was scared to death of guns. But the rules, the discipline, the etiquette, and the eyes that are on these kids at the trap range, it's amazing. The gun is only in 3 positions, Jim. It's either down at the ground, it's down range to be fired, or it's in the air. We don't have problems. And this discipline and the rules that we place on these kids are helping these kids make great decisions. We very seldom have to take a kid and say, hey, we were not being safe here. We can't do that again. So it's the fastest growing high school sport in the state of Kentucky. It has surpassed bass fishing. And I'm just thrilled that my son's involved in something like that.
Now, and that's pretty neat to see these different avenues for kids that are coming up. It's not just fishing. There's shooting. There's, as you talked about earlier when you and I discussed some things, some painting, some other things going on for the girls out there that are not traditional things that are really coming about. Tell us, now that you've already alluded to that you have a son, is there a push in Mark's heart for Max to take Mark's position in the pro world?
Well, I would have loved for Max to have been a serious fisherman, but that's a lot of pressure to put on a kid. A dad that has been ranked on the Elite Series for 30 years, someone who's an established career, that put a lot of pressure on him. Does he like to fish? Yes, he does. We go fishing an awful lot together, but we've taken that out of the competitive range and just doing it as a father-son deal where we get to spend a lot of time. He caught his personal best last fall. He caught him almost a 6-pounder on a jig. He's caught some whopper smallmouth with me on the Tennessee River. So he's kind of become my boat caddy, and he drives the boat now. I said, Max, run us over here, run us over there. Let's run down here. And teaching him the rules of the road with the boat, wearing the life jacket on always when the big motor is on with the kill switch attached. He knows that's the utmost importance. He knows to be cautious. He knows how to run that boat. So I'm teaching him life skills. Would I love for him to have done what I did? Yeah, my ego wants that, but I want him to be successful in his own ranks. And fishing is just something that we do together for fun. Now, his sister outfishes him on a regular basis when she fishes some. Caroline has always had a knack to catch bigger and more fish than Max because she's by far more patient than he is.
Well, and that's pretty cool to have a little sister out there that's got a little bit of the competitiveness. I love to see young girls coming up like that, wanting to do things. Tell our audience as we're listening, we alluded to in the beginning of this thing, some of the things that have really challenged you in life. Kind of get us into the meningitis. First off, explain to people that are out there, what is the medical term? What does it mean to have meningitis?
Meningitis is an infection that affects what's called the meninges of the brain. That is the sheath that covers our brain. It's the protective covering of our brain. And I got an infection that was from a tooth. I had a tooth that had to be pulled. It had an abscess in it. And all of that bad material got into my bloodstream and manifested itself on in my brain. And I'm very, very lucky to have lived through this. I was at Guntersville in 2005 in February. My wife was there, and Caroline was about 6 months old at the time. And Jim, as I recall, it was probably one of the best days of fishing I ever had in my life. I didn't know how close it was going to be, possibly my last day of fishing. I had 5 fish in the 40-pound range on Guntersville. I had 3 fish in the 8.5 to 9-pound range and a couple other great big ones. Found another place that I could catch 4-pounders on any cast and another place that I could catch 3-pounders on any cast. So I was really ready for this tournament. So I had instructed Donna to have the trailer at the ramp about 5 o'clock that afternoon to pick me up. I would come to the ramp, and at 5 o'clock, I wasn't there. She got really worried. I happened to be straight across the river channel from there. And as I was pulling my trolling motor up, I put the trolling motor up. I sat down, put my life jacket on, zipped it up. My vision went from here to here. That's all I could see was basically what little bit of cone of vision there I had. And I panicked. I mean, I'm sitting out on the lake. I can't see the other side of the lake. So all I could see basically was the depth finder in front of me. So I programmed the depth finder on the GPS to take me straight across the lake. And I drove just like this, Jim, with my face on the depth finder across the lake. There was no wind that day. It was very calm. So I putted across the lake. And when I get across the lake, all of a sudden my vision comes back. Well, another angler was there waiting to get his boat out. And he thought he was going to have to go to the tournament director because he thought I was intoxicated because I could not get my boat on the trailer. Now, how many times, Jim, have you put a boat in and out of the water? You get pretty good at it over time, but I could not hit the trailer with the boat. Donna had backed the trailer in and the angler was watching me, and I get it up there. We crank it up, we take off. And that night, about 2 o'clock in the morning, I told Donna, I said, we've got to go to the hospital. Something's wrong. I have got the worst headache I've ever had. Let's get to the hospital. Went to the hospital, and they wanted to give me Demerol for a migraine headache. I said, I don't have headaches. Something else is wrong. They released me at 6 a.m. I slept till about noon. I was going to go back out on the water and finish practicing the second day after a little bit of rest, and I never got out of bed. Donna called my dermatologist and asked him what he thought. He asked her to do a couple of tests, and instantly he says, get him back to the hospital. He has meningitis. We get the same ER doctor, and he goes, oh, you want that shot of Demerol? I said, no. Poke a hole in my spine. Let's get some fluid out of there. Let's test it. I have talked to some other physicians, my local physicians, and say, I have meningitis. And when they tested it, it showed up that I did. And 17 days later, I finally walked out of the hospital. I was very lucky. Meningitis is a very sneaky disease in which can cause blindness. You lose limbs, arms, legs, all kind of negative things can happen to you. But I basically walked away from it, Jim, scot-free. It took me about 6 months to get over it, but I walked away from it a healthy individual.
So now that really coming at the time that it did in the middle of your tournament like you did, also in the midst of a career like you're talking about, could have been a big derailment to what you were trying to do going forward. Is there any advice you would give somebody that maybe some warning signs of something like this was coming?
Well, I had no real warning signs at all from it, Jim. It's a communicable thing in 2 forms. One, there's a bacterial meningitis in which can be passed from person to person, and that's why we get vaccinated for college dorms and things like that. And as young people, we get it because we're close together, and that stops that passage of meningitis. And then there is a viral form. They presumed mine was a viral form, which I'm still susceptible. I could get it again at any time. So those are the 2 things right there. But what it did, my daughter was 6 months old. I had just found out 2 weeks prior that Donna was pregnant with our second child, our son. And it strengthened our lives because Donna was right there the entire time. She never left my side for those 17 days. She was pregnant. She slept in a chair. They basically had to put me in a janitor's closet because there were no more beds at the little hospital there near Gunnersville where I went. We had a great a doctor that Dr. Pamela Quinn that took care of me, neurologist, and I still could not believe Donna was there by my side the whole time. Little did I know that act of love and kindness I was going to have to do several years later when we found out that she was diagnosed with cancer. So it was kind of a precursor for what was to come, but I just didn't know what my job was going to entail in that.
Well, in most people's lives, they don't have to go through as struggles, I would say, as major as what you've come through. You've come through the meningitis and fought your way through that to keep going with the fishing, and then now what you just brought up to us with your wife and dealing with cancer. Go into that a little bit and tell us in medical terms what did she have and what hit her.
Well, Donna was a wonderful, gregarious, outgoing, fun-loving person. She had the best laugh in the world, Jim. That laugh is almost haunting because people wanted to be around her when she was having such a good time. Donna was diagnosed with a very, very serious cancer in which the prognosis today is still very grave. She was diagnosed with one of the worst cancers that we've known to mankind, and that's pancreatic cancer. She had basically a 6% chance of living 2 years from diagnosis to death. She lived 18 months after she was diagnosed. And I was on my way to the Texas Toyota Bass Classic. And for some reason, I got out of town a little bit late. And she called me and says she'd been having some symptoms and we were trying to figure them out. She says, "Look, I'm going back to the doctor. Where are you?" And I was literally 10 miles out of town. And I said, "I'm on my way." And I got, the feeling you get when the blue lights come on behind you, Jim?
Mm-hmm.
Well, multiply this times 1,000. I just had a really terrible feeling that something was not going to be good. So I turned the boat and truck around, go to the doctor's office, meet Donna there. And the doctor, she had an MRI, and the doctor was surprised that I was there. He knew he was a big friend and a big fan, and he knew I was headed to a big tournament. He goes, "Mark, you're here." So he goes through and he says, "Donna, we found something on your MRI, and it's tumor, and it's on your pancreas." And I immediately knew from the biology degree that I have that this was not good. And the doctor looked at me as to say, "Are you going to tell her or am I going to tell her?" And I looked at him and I looked at Donna. I said, "Donna, this is most likely pancreatic cancer." And she says, "Well, we'll just have it taken out." I said, "Well, let Dr. Long take over and let him explain to you." And he says, "Donna, he's right. This is what this most likely is." And it started our journey through surgery, radiation, and chemotherapy, and a journey that I knew would probably not end well. At the time, Max and Caroline were 9 and 8. They were 8, or they were 7 and 8 actually. And I knew that they weren't going to have their mother much longer. I immediately called Bass. I immediately said, "I'm out. I'm done. Whatever. If you can give me a medical exemption, I would appreciate it, but I won't be at the beginning of the season next year. I'm needed here at home." And they gave me not only a 1-year exemption, but they gave me a 2-year exemption. And every sponsor I had, Jim, kept me on my contracts, not for 1 year, but 2 years. They kept the income coming in. I was able to work from home on the fishing side of things. I wrote a lot of fishing articles, how-to articles for websites. I did lots of interviews. So I kept that part of the business alive, but without the help of the people that I work for, and I work for just about every one of them still to this day, 9 years later, without their help, I would not have been able to continue fishing, much less take care of Donna and my family. Donna had great quality of life during that 18 months. The last 2 months were very difficult to watch her evaporate from our lives. But she passed away early on the morning of March 25th. So it's been the Three Musketeers to this point ever since, Max, Caroline, and I. But I was grateful for all the people that helped us, all the people that gave us medical knowledge, all the people that prayed for us, that brought food. It's an amazing thing when people do selfless things for you, and it has taught me to do for others since. I try to go out of my way to help everybody I possibly can.
Well, and that sounds like a full circle here of not only a great shout out to the fishing industry as a whole that stuck behind some of its anglers, but also what we referred to, and you as well referred to early in this podcast, is that people that get outdoors doing stuff end up being good people. Like you didn't have that happen to you and those people turned their back on you. They said, no, if this would have, I bet you a lot of those sponsors put their self in your shoes and said, hey, if this was happening to me, I would want somebody to be there for me. And I think the outdoor industry as a whole is showing its true colors when stuff like this goes on. Now, we know you went through 6 months of battling the meningitis. We went through 18 months to 2 years dealing with it with your wife. That's a lot of time on your fishing career that causes, a pause, we'll call it. How in the world, with all that time missing, do you feel like it affected your fishing as a whole? I'm sure just like a guy working on cars or somebody out there, your son shooting trap, you need those reps. You need that time on the water. You need that mental exercise to get you at the top of your game. Tell people how maybe that it affected your game.
Well, the game changed, Jim. It completely changed. Fishing became a whole lot less important to me than it was after dealing with the loss of my wife. Grief is a funny thing, and it affects everybody differently. It took me about 6 months to kind of get my feet under me. It took me about 3 months to realize that I had an 8 and a 9-year-old that were carrying me around on their backs, taking care of their father when their father was supposed to be taking care of them. That was a real aha moment when I realized that my babies were taking care of me, and that's not their job. But they were taking care of me just to make sure I was okay. They were scared. I was scared. I was sad. They were sad. And all of a sudden, after about 3 months, I had that moment and life changed. I got myself together. I got up every day. I made breakfast. I took them to school. I was there to pick them up. I gave them the confidence of knowing Dad's not going anywhere. Dad's going to be right here. The fishing was completely set aside, but yet it's been such a big part of my life all these years. It just kind of was like putting a good pot of stew over there and turning the boiler, just turning it on simmer. It kept bubbling. And I'm fortunate, Jim, I've got a little pond in my front yard, as you well know. And I went out there one day and I caught a fish. And for that 15 seconds of catching that fish, the world stood still. I didn't have to worry about grief. I didn't have to worry about my kids. I wasn't worrying about finances. I got that elation of catching that one little fish, little guy, about 12 inches long is all he was. But that little fish took me back to where it all started for me. After the year 14, after Donna passed, I went back to fishing on the Bassmaster Tour. They allowed me back in the Elite Series. First tournament was at the Sabine River, one of the toughest fisheries in the United States. And about 9 o'clock in the morning on the first day, Jim, I was ready to go home. I was ready to quit. And I'll get emotional when I say this, but at 9 o'clock, I picked up another rod. I had a tube on there, and I unhooked the tube off my reel, and I had that much line, the distance between the rod tip and my hand. I put the hook in the tube. I dropped it over the side, literally threw it over the side, dropped my rod tip to the side of the boat, and I looked up and I said, honey, speaking to Donna, please put a fish on there for me. And I literally picked the rod up, and my line is going out the front of the boat. And I fought a 3.5 pound largemouth bass, which at the Sabine River is like a 10-pounder anywhere else. Right. I flip it in the boat. And Donna was such a jokester. she joked about everything. She gave me such a hard time. And I looked up in the sky and I just said, really, Donna? You're going to give me the biggest fish I've caught all. And it spurred me on. In the next 15 minutes, I caught 4 more for a limit. I ended up culling through the day and was in the top 10 after the first day of that event. So fishing came back to me and it put normalcy back in my life. I'm still having to take care of my kids. Cousins that just called there on the phone just a second ago, cousin Teresa helped me. Friends helped me. My mother helped me with these kids and got me back to working. And as I got back to working, I became healthier. My kids became healthier. And so we kind of pushed on by ourselves for a little while. So the fishing came secondary. It's a job, Jim. It's an absolute privilege to do what I do, but it's my vocation. And my real job, my real purpose is to direct Max and Caroline in the right way to get them ready for life. And so I have to work. We all have to work. And fishing is what I do for a job, but it became my job and my passion became much more focused on Max and Caroline.
Now that you've brought up passion, tell us, we hear rumors out there that there's a new love in the world. So tell us what that passion is.
Well, about 6 months after my wife passed, I was introduced to a lady that had lost her husband 7 days prior to me losing Donna. We did not know one another, even though a couple of our kids had been in class together. We still didn't know one another, but a mutual friend, a mutual angel, introduced us, and we became really good friends. We became confidants in which we could be mad and we could talk about grief and we could be sad together and we could have fun together. And this person is the most amazing individual, from coming from the same place I did, different circumstances, but coming from the depth of grief and sorrow and the what if of the world. We formed this bond and this friendship for a couple of years in which we spent time exercising together, walking, talking, going to lunch, and that kind of healed our minds. And the next thing I know, the man in me took over, and I went, "Wow, she is gorgeous. What am I doing here?" And then it has developed into a romance. We're planning to get married October 23rd, and to get to spend my life with Melissa the rest of my life is going to be an absolute wonderful voyage. She is strong. She is a disciplinarian. She is kind. She is sweet. She is good. She helps others. She keeps me motivated. At 5'2", she's I call her a mean little woman, but she is just determined, and she's the kindest, biggest, loving soul I've ever been around. And I say this, she has 5 children, and they have become mine, and I have 2. So they have become hers. So we're the Brady Bunch plus 1. And I truly think she would be Donna approved. Yeah, I think she would.
Well, that's pretty special to have that kind of love in your life twice. I mean, you've had 2. It sounds like you've got 2 ladies that would do anything in this world for you, and that's pretty special. That most people never get to see that kind of true love, and you've had it twice. So
I'm very fortunate, and you being a football coach, you have definitely told me I've outpunted my coverage many times, and for some reason, some way, somehow, I've done it again. So I'm very humbled to be that fortunate twice in life. And in life, it doesn't mean that I love Donna any less or Melissa loves her husband Doug any less. It just means things have changed and time changes, and we can focus on the here and now, not what happened before. And we talk about it all the time. We talk about both of them all the time. And we understand that we're moving forward with the here and now, what's going on here on earth now. We'll see our loved ones later.
Right.
But for the here and now, this is what we're going to do. And what we're going to do is enjoy time together and raise these kids and push these kids forward and help them achieve the skills they need to be successful as well. So
Now everybody loves hearing a little bit of the lighter side of life, I call it. Our audience really loves to hear some stories that other folks, have not maybe been privileged to. What's a funny Mark Menendez story out there that people would just go, oh my gosh, I would have never thought that would have happened?
Oh, I don't know, Jim. I've torn up so many boats. I've torn up so many lower units on motors. Um,
We ever fell out of the boat?
I've never done that yet. Now that I've made that statement, I will. I don't know. I guess this is a crazy story. I was fishing a tournament years ago when I was in college. It was in this early spring, and my partner and I. This was a club tournament, and it was a boat. It was not a team tournament. And I saw a bass up there that was not in good shape. It had cotton all over its eyes. It couldn't see well, and it's a big one. It's like a 5.5 pounder. And my partner Tim and I are casting at this fish individually, and we both threw crankbaits right down the side of that fish, and that darn fish could still feel those baits, and it reacted to both of those baits at the same time, and we both caught that fish, Jim. We both caught him. He bit one crankbait and turned and got the other one, and they were both legally hooked in there, and we brought that fish into the boat, and that's the craziest thing that's ever happened to me in a tournament, I guess, is we both caught that fish. It weighed 5 pounds and 10 ounces. And I was the tournament director, and I excluded myself from the ruling on this. My suggestion was we just cut the weight in half, and that would be the fairest thing to do, or count the weight for both of us, the individual weight for both of us, and that's what we did. And we both won big bass, and I ended up winning the tournament with that weight. But that was one of the craziest things I've ever seen, to two guys catch the same darn fish.
Wow. Now that's not something you hear of every day. I've heard of people catching fish, out of the lake that already had a hook in them that got broke off.
Sure.
But hardly ever have I heard of that one of having two hooks in each side of the mouth. That's pretty unique in itself.
It was amazing. And that's the cool thing about fishing is some of the weirdest things happen. Some of the coolest things in the world happen. In my office place on the deck of my Skeeter boat, I get to see deer, ducks. Occasionally, even up north, you'll see a bear or a moose or whatever. It's an amazing place to understand that there is a higher power, that there is a higher being that created this place for us. And we have a responsibility to take care of it, to take care of what was given to us, whether we put the boat on the bank and take a garbage bag and pick up trash, or we work on getting somebody else involved in the sport we love. And one of the things that I've gotten very passionate about and very close to, Jim, is working with Yamaha on what is called Right Waters. And that is Yamaha's conservancy group. And I am working diligently on this Asian carp issue, this invasive species issue, where Asian carp are taking over our waterways. I've been to Washington. I've been in front of 60% of the House and Senate members to date. I've been in some of the higher ranking members' offices and have managed to help get funds to the local state governments, to the local fish and wildlife people, to help them do research on these fish, to get research elements done, to get equipment done, getting the money they need to help fight this problem. So Yamaha Right Waters I'm very involved in that, and trying to make our waterways better than when I found them as a young person. I'm on the backside of my career, Jim. And if I can help it, make it better for some young person and give them the opportunities I have, that's my goal and my journey at this time.
Well, that's pretty admirable in itself, to be able to give something back to the sport and try to help that future generation by fighting something that they don't know a lot about just yet. And you have that 30 years of knowledge of what you've seen change over the years, and you got that opportunity to help the sport. Now, we're going to try to circle this wagon right here and wrap everything up. If we were at the end of Mark Menendez's life and the book of Mark Menendez was written, what would you hope people read in that book?
Well, I don't know, Jim. I hope people would look back and say he was a good, kind man. He tried to help people. He tried to educate people. He tried to get as many young people into the sport that he loved as possible. That that he was just he was a good fisherman, but he was a better person, is what I hope people would say. I try to do for others where possible in donations or time or gift or whatever it is, as much as possible. But just hopefully they would see me as someone that tried to always try to do the right thing. Just try to do the right thing.
Well, that's a pretty cool book there. Hearing that, I'd love to read it one of these days. Now, tell us, everybody that's out there listening, into the social media world, into, obviously we're on the Spotify's, Apple podcast, Amazon, all these things out there to be able to get our show, as well as YouTube. Anybody that's out there listening, how do they get some contact with Mark Menendez? What's a way to contact you?
Well, you can follow me on Instagram at Mark Menendez Bass, at Twitter at Mark Menendez, and then on my YouTube channel at Bass TV. That's Bass TV. That is my television show. I have a local television show here in my area, and you can see all kinds of fishing videos. Several of the episodes of the show are on there, but those are the three ways that you can follow Mark Menendez.
That should be every way to be able to get a hold to him, guys. If you're out there listening and you want to know more about him, you want to be able to contact him to learn about some baits or learn about his sponsors, I'm sure he'd be more than happy to give you the time to be able to point you in the right direction. If you're out there looking for a new boat, obviously you can see it on his shirt. He'd be able to tell you how to get to Skeeter and get that new model out there. So, Mark, thank you very much for coming on today.
Well, I appreciate you, Jim. We love you. We appreciate everything that you do for youth, to get them outdoors and to help all of those folks that you're helping with your foundation and all the good work that you do. We're proud to call you family, sir.
Well, thank you very much, and I appreciate the time. And hopefully, here into the future, we can get you back on and you can kind of update all of us on how things are going.
Well, I certainly will, and I look forward to seeing you on October 23rd in Paducah, Kentucky, because you'll be having an invitation here shortly.
I got you. All right.